Jeff Passan wrote another article. Let's go talk about it. So the first thing he mentions in his article is the next wave of Japanese stars potentially coming to the States with a couple of big boppers in Munetaka Murakami and Kazuma Okamoto, along with right-hander Tatsuya Imai. Now, of course, they have to be posted first, but Passan mentions that their team could be looking to take advantage of the posting fee, so it definitely seems like it could be a possibility. Starting off with third baseman Munetaka Murakami, he's known for hitting a whole bunch of dingers, especially back in 2022 when he set the single-season mark for home runs in a season. Now, there is some swing and miss in his game, but he's been very productive over the last few years, so I still expect a lot of teams to be in the mix. Teams such as the Mets and the Padres have reportedly been scouting him heavily, while other teams like the Dodgers, Yankees, and Mariners are always brought up as good fits. I also wonder if the Phillies could be players, especially if they end up losing Kyle Schwarber and they decide they want an upgrade over Alec Bohm. As for first baseman Kazuma Okamoto, he hasn't put up the numbers like Murakami, and he is a bit older who needs to get a bit better against hitting higher velo, but he's been very productive in Japan with an 879 OPS over 11 seasons in the NPB, so he could be a nice fallback option for teams that need more offense. And I could see the Mariners also being good fits here because Josh Naylor is going to be hitting free agency, and maybe a dark horse team like the Nationals after they release Nathaniel Lowe. On the pitching side of things, you got Tatsuya Imai. He's a little bit taller than Yoshinobu Yamamoto at 5'11". He's got good velo with a bunch of secondaries that will be sure to attract a lot of teams, especially since he's striking out 10 batters per 9 this season with an ERA right around 1.5 over 20 starts so far. Moving on to the next part of the article, he talks about how much does Kyle Tucker end up getting. So in my way too early offseason predictions I did not too long ago, I said I wouldn't be surprised to see Tucker get anywhere from $450 to $500 million, and I think he could break that $500 million mark. Now, he has struggled at the plate since I came out with that video, which Passan does point out, but I don't think that's going to be much of a factor because he's still on pace to be a 5 wins above replacement player this season, which has been right around his average going back over the last few years. Now, with one win right now being worth right around $9 million on average, along with factoring in regression in the back half of the deal, as well as the market upping the bidding, I do think he still falls in that $450 to $500 million range, and Passan does say he thinks he falls in the $400 million range as well. Now, if I were to go for a range right now, I realistically think he ends up somewhere in the $450 to $470 million range, and maybe he could break that $500 million mark, depending on how aggressive teams get. Now, I'm going to say this. Passan did mention in the beginning of his article about the potential lockout after next season possibly becoming an issue in free agency because teams might not want to commit that much money with a possible lockout coming up. So I do wonder if that's going to temper how aggressive some teams end up getting, which could hold him back from getting that $500 million. As for possible suitors, he mentions the Phillies, Giants, and the Cubs, but I do think you're going to see some big market teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers kick the tires at least, some possible dark horse teams like the Nationals, who could maybe be looking to get over the hump this coming off season. The Rays have new ownership coming in, and he is a native of Tampa. Maybe even the Rangers, if they fall short of the postseason this year, look to get aggressive this coming off season, or perhaps even the Blue Jays, who have been aggressive in free agency over recent years, and they look to keep the momentum going after a strong season. In the next part of the article, he talks about Kyle Schwarber. Now, this guy's having a phenomenal season. This guy's been a monster this year. Now, Passan does mention that teams could scoff at him turning 33 soon, his high strikeout rate, along with the fact that he's only a DH, but he goes on to say that teams are going to be looking to fill holes in their lineup this year, especially at DH, so he thinks he's still going to get paid. Now, I agree with that. He's on pace to finish with a Fangraph wins above replacement right around 4.5 to 5, so I think it's a safe bet he averages at least a 3 to a 4 F4 over the next few seasons, which would be worth right around $30 million per year. So I think a 4-year deal for, say, $120 million is very realistic. And what I like about that for Schwarber is that I think teams would be attracted to the fact that, yeah, he's a good hitter, but it's not going to take a 7 to a 10-year deal to get it done. So I think he's going to have a very good market. Now, he mentions him staying in Philly as a possibility with other teams like the Rangers, Braves, Padres, Astros, Tigers, and even the Reds being potential suitors. Now, for me personally, I don't know if I see the Braves or the Padres getting aggressive for him like that. And the Tigers last offseason, they didn't budge or going all out for Alex Bregman, so I wonder how far they would go for Kyle Schwarber in this situation. However, I could see Chris Young and the Rangers making a play to help out their offense that has been very up and down this year. And if there was ever a time for the Reds to make a splash, I think it would be here to bring in Schwarber because their offense was very underwhelming this year, and he's a Cincinnati native. That's just perfect, if you ask me. me. I'll also throw in the Red Sox here. Alex Cora has said recently he's very intrigued with Schwarber's free agency coming up, and he did play great in Boston for a few months back in 2021. On to the next section. Does Alex Bregman stay or go? Now, this part's interesting because Passan does mention that he thinks he'll opt out, bearing a catastrophic injury or a slump, but he also mentions that Bregman has basically been a perfect fit in Boston because of his excellent at-bats, the good defense at third base, and the relationships he's built, especially with the young players like Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, and Christian Campbell. He goes on to say, though, that other teams out there are going to be looking for help at third base, like the Phillies, who I mentioned earlier for Murakami, the Tigers, who made a strong run at him last offseason, and he also mentions the Yankees even after they traded for Ryan McMahon, but I don't know if I see that, to be completely honest with you. In the end, though, I do think Bregman and the Red Sox are eventually going to come to terms on a new deal. It's been a good relationship on both sides, both on and off the field, and even though I do think the Red Sox are going to want some options and some incentives in there, I think they're going to end up figuring it out. And I know a lot of people out there, they're going to say, oh, he's a Scott Boras client, he's totally going to take the most money. Well, not so fast. You just saw Matt Chapman not too long ago sign basically kind of the same deal that Bregman did with the Giants, and they ended up working out a new extension. So even though you're a Scott Boras client, that doesn't mean you're necessarily just going to go to the highest bidder. I think if Bregman wants to stay in Boston, which it does seem like it, he seems to be enjoying his time in Boston, then I think they're going to work something out. So the postseason is just around the corner. Football's starting back up. School is back in session. Work is busier than ever for a lot of us right now. But because of that, I'm very happy to be partnering up with Factor for today's video, my absolute go-to when I don't have time to cook. The convenience is unbeatable. They deliver your meals right to your door. You pop one in the microwave for about 2 minutes and you're ready to eat. Factor is something for everyone, including calorie smart meals, protein plus, keto, and even vegan options. For me lately, my fluffy self has been on a bit of a cut, so I'm leaning more into the calorie smart meals like the shredded chicken taco bowl, the cavatapia meatballs, and even pesto turkey with roasted tomatoes. They have a bunch of variety with both goals and flavor in mind. They also have a bunch of other items to help you get through the week, like breakfast, snacks, smoothies, and juices. So if you're looking to save time and still eat great with both flavor and nutrition in mind, head to the link in the description down below and use my code 50HIDE to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. So try out Factor meals for yourself and see just how easy eating well can be. In the next section, he goes over guys that he thinks are going to opt out. He says yes for Pete Alonso, and yeah, I agree. He was looking for a long-term deal last offseason, and after his good season this year, I think he's going to get that deal. He thinks Edwin Diaz is going to opt out unless the Mets figure out a new contract, and honestly, I do wonder what David Stearns does there if he ends up opting out. Now, with Stearns, we all know he likes to look for value, especially on the pitching side of things. Now, with Diaz, he is pitching well this year, but over the last couple of seasons, he's averaged right around a 1.5 F4, which is worth right around $15 million. His AAV has been $18.5 million, so I would imagine he's going to be looking for that for more years, but will Stearns be willing to give him that? Or instead, would he rather go for someone cheaper out there like he has done with pitching over the last couple of years? On to Cody Bellinger, and he thinks he's going to opt out too, and I agree. He's hit very well this year. He's been a great fit at Yankee Stadium and just with the Yankees in general, and I think the Yankees would be very much open to keeping him around, especially since Paul Goldschmidt is going to be a free agent soon, and his versatility, I think, would benefit the Yankees moving forward, because what are you going to do with Spencer Jones? You know, what's going to happen there? And if Paul Goldschmidt ends up leaving, Bellinger can end up playing a lot of first base. You could put Spencer Jones in the outfield, so I think it's just a good fit. On to Robert Suarez with the Padres, and he thinks he opts out because he's 34, and this is his last chance to get a good contract. Now, because he has put up a 2 F4 this season, which is worth right around $18 million, I think he's going to opt out too, because his salary is dropping to $8 million over the next couple of years, so I think Suarez is absolutely going to be able to beat that. Moving on to Shane Bieber, and he thinks he opts out too, and I think he could. Now, remember with Matthew Boyd, he was in a similar situation last year. He came back late from Tommy John, pitched well down the stretch and in the postseason, and eventually signed a 2-year deal with the Cubs. Now, with Bieber, he has the much better track record, so I think he could go either way here. If he opts out and leans into that track record, along with the fact that he pitches well down the stretch, then yeah, I think there could be enough teams out there there willing to pay him very well. However, if he does opt back in for another year, pitches well next year, then he could really set himself up for a monster payday for next offseason. So again, I think he could go either way. What I think it comes down to, for me personally, if he ends up liking his time with the Blue Jays here over the next month or so, then I could see him wanting to stick around and then go out into the market next offseason. He thinks Jack Flaherty is going to opt out because of his high strikeout numbers. And you all know me, I like the advanced metrics, but I wonder, because he would be getting paid well next year, perhaps he rolls it back and tries to get better results. And if he does, then he'll really set himself up for another nice payday next offseason, especially since he's still going to be in his early 30s. He talks about Trevor Story next, and he doesn't think he's going to opt out because it would be too risky despite a good bounce back season. Now, for me personally, I honestly think he could opt out. Now, the one thing with Story over the last few years have been the injuries, but the last injury he had back in 2024, that was a fluke injury on a diving play, and with the good season that he's having this year, both offensively and defensively, I think he could get a contract that would beat out the 2 years and $50 million that he's owed, even if he ends up taking a lesser AAV at, say, $20 million per year for 3 or 4 years, then he would still be getting better than what he would be getting if he stayed. Now, he is about to turn 33, and this could be his last chance to get himself a very good contract for, say, in that 4-year range, because if he does opt back in, he's not going to be a free agent again until he's 35. He mentions Tyler O'Neill not opting out because of his injuries this year, and yeah, I agree. I think he stays put in Baltimore. He thinks Jock Peterson stays because of his down year and the injuries, and yeah, I agree. I think that's a no-brainer. He thinks Lourdes Gurriel Jr. stays, and I agree. He's barely putting up a 700 OPS this year. No way he turns down $18 million for next year. He thinks the newest Braves shortstop, Passan Kim, ends up staying, and I agree. He missed a ton of time this year. I think it would be crazy to give up that salary for next year, and he's only just about to turn 30, so he's going to be in a good position for next offseason if he has himself a good season in 2026. And last but not least, he mentions a couple of arms for the Mets, Frankie Montas and AJ Minter, who he thinks will opt back in because of their injuries, and yeah, that's a no-brainer. In the next part of the article, he mentions all the club options, and out of the ones he does think get exercised, the only one I do wonder about, Max Muncy. Now, for the Dodgers, they may think they have a better option in free agency out there, maybe with Munetaka Murakami, or they could stay in-house for someone like Alex Freeland. He could take over there, depending on how the roster shakes out. Now, for the ones he thinks are unlikely to get picked up, the only one that caught my eye was Andrew Kittredge. Now, he's actually pitched very well for the Cubs as of late since going there, striking out 11 batters per 9 and under 2 walks per 9. So I wonder if the Cubs think he could be worth that salary for a full season in 2026. Up next, he talks about starting pitchers that are going to get good paydays. He starts off with Framber Valdez. And yes, there was that whole incident with crossing up his catcher, Cesar Salazar. Now, in my opinion, I definitely think that's going to be something that's brought up in negotiations with teams. I would imagine teams are going to be a little worried about that. But in the end, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball for years now. He's having another solid season this year, so I think wherever he ends up signing, he's going to get himself a fat contract, and I think he's going to get around $30 million per year since he's averaged right around a 4 F4 for the last few seasons. When it comes to possible fits, I'm looking at teams that have good infield since he does induce a lot of ground balls. The Blue Jays have been solid defensively in the infield this year, and they have starting pitchers approaching free agency this offseason and next. With Chaim Bloom running the show starting this offseason, perhaps he looks to invest in someone that can lead the rotation moving forward, and with their good infield defense, maybe they could be a fit. Maybe the Cubs could be a fit as well, and if they don't bring back Kyle Tucker, then they're going to have some money to play with. I could also see the Orioles, who really need someone to anchor their rotation, but their infield has struggled this year, so I wonder if they would be a good fit. I would also love to say the Giants, who could use someone else alongside Logan Webb, but after the whole cross-up situation, I could honestly see Buster Posey, one of the best catchers of all time, not being interested. He goes on to talk about Dylan Cease, who's had a weird year because his ERA is close to a 5, which doesn't really represent the good strikeout to walk ratio he has. Teams, they value those metrics. They value the swing and miss, along with the fact that he's only just about to turn 30 years old. So I think in the end, he's going to get himself a good payday. I think he ends up getting something like what Blake Snell got. Remember with Blake Snell, the couple of years before he hit free agency, he had some funkiness going on. He had that high walk rate. He had a lot of injuries as well, but he still got a lot of interest on on the market and got a fat payday with the Dodgers. Teams that I think would be good fits for Cease are ones that need more swing and miss in the rotation, and of course ones that can afford a big salary. The Orioles really could use a durable guy with stuff at the top of their rotation, and they have tried to trade for him in the past. I'll mention the Cardinals again, like I did for Framber, because they really need more strikeouts, only ranking 29th in strikeouts per 9 this year, and I could see him being a guy Chaim Bloom would like to invest in, since they did show interest in him before he was traded to the Padres. The Angels also need more starting pitching, and after investing in Yusei Kikuchi last offseason, maybe Artie Moreno could be willing to spend here. I mentioned Framber for the Cubs earlier, but maybe a reunion with Cease, who they originally drafted, could be in the works too. I'll also throw the Red Sox into the mix here. They will be looking for a number 2 to go behind Garrett Crochet this offseason, and they have shown interest in Cease before because they like his swing and miss profile. He brings up Merrill Kelly at 37 years old, but he doesn't have the qualifying offer attached to him since he got traded at the deadline, which I think is going to help him land at least a 3-year deal, and since he is an Arizona native, I could honestly see him just going back to the Diamondbacks. Speaking of the Diamondbacks, he brings up Zach Gallen and throws in an interesting wrinkle. His numbers have been down this year, but with his track record and better numbers lately, he wonders if he's going to get himself a long-term deal instead of just accepting the qualifying offer with the D-backs because of a possible lockout coming up. Now, I personally don't see that. I think he is going to take that qualifying offer because he's been so up and down this year, and I wonder if that's going to scare teams off. So I think in the end, he accepts the QO, and then he just goes back out into the market, and they figure it out then. The last starting pitcher he brings up is Lucas Giolito. He's going to have his club option turn into a mutual option with about 14 more innings this month. Now, he's been very solid this year for the Red Sox, but with an F-WAR right around 2, would he be willing to take a 3-4-year deal at 31 years old for, say, $18 million per year? Or would he rather go for the mutual option and try to build upon those numbers next year and have another year removed from elbow surgery? He is a guy that's posted at least a 4 F-WAR twice in his career, and if he could do that again, then he could definitely better his market next offseason, and he's still going to be only 32 at the time. In the next section, he brings up a bunch of relievers hitting the market, and to me, the most notable names are Ryan Helsley and Devin Williams because they've had so many ups and downs this year. However, because they both have good underlying metrics, Helsley with his velo and Williams with his good strikeout rate, the nasty changeup, along with their track records, I do think they're going to cash in, especially since they're both in their early 30s. I'm also interested in Luke Weaver, who's found a lot of success the last couple of years with the Yankees, mostly as a setup guy, but being a closer here and there as well, and I wonder if teams out there could see him as a good cost-saving addition to be their closer. Now, I mentioned earlier with the Mets and Edwin Diaz, maybe David Stearns could see someone like Luke Weaver as a good cost-cutting option and still bringing a lot of value to the team. Maybe Alex Anthopoulos could see him as a cheaper option to replace Raisel Iglesias, and then he uses the savings to add more to the bullpen, which I do think they need. The Rangers have a lot of relievers hitting free agency, so maybe they could show some interest. I also think Michael Kopech could be very interesting. He missed a lot of time this year with a shoulder injury and knee surgery, but he's back now, and he's had a lot of success since going to the Dodgers. Now, these next couple of months could be a bit of a showcase for him, and if he pitches well with the velo and stuff that he has before turning 30 years old, you know his agent is going to be getting phone calls left and right. In the next section, he talks about how teams might see Bo Bichette. Now, he's had a great bounce back year this year, but the one thing that's always raised question marks with him is his defense. Now, metrics-wise, he's a pretty below-average shortstop, so I do wonder if he has a better shot at getting better offers to play second base. But in the end, though, his agent is going to push the fact that he's a shortstop, which is a higher value position, which would lead to a better payday. So I think in the end, he's going to get paid like a shortstop because of what he brings to the table offensively. Some teams that I think could make sense would be the Dodgers, depending on how things shake out with their infield. The Tigers do have Kevin McGonigal waiting in the wings, but if they let Gleyber Torres move on, maybe they could be a fit. I think in the end, though, the team that makes the most sense is the one he's already with, the Blue Jays, since they don't already have a compelling option banging on the door as of right now. He also brings up Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor. Now, the numbers have dipped a bit since going to Seattle at the deadline, but they both have great track records. Suarez is hitting the crap out of the ball this year. Naylor, he's been a solid hitter the last couple of years. So with teams looking to improve their lineups this coming off season, I think they're going to get a lot of interest. He also mentions JT Realmuto, but I imagine him and the Phillies are going to work something out because the Phillies lack catching depth at this point after trading Eduardo Tate, one of the top catching prospects in the game. Last but not least, he talks about how interesting Luis Arraez is going to be this offseason. Now, we all know the deal with Arraez. Doesn't really strike out, makes a ton of contact, good batting average, but pretty much nothing else. Now, his wins above replacement hasn't even broken a 1 this year, but to me, despite that, I think there's going to be teams interested, especially ones that need to improve on the strikeouts and make more contact. And I actually wonder if he could have more success at a park that fits his style more. I think the Nationals could make sense since their ballpark fits singles hitters well, and they have an opening at first base after getting rid of Nathaniel Lowe, or perhaps the Reds, who have the 7th highest strikeout rate this year, could bring him in to help him improve that. Maybe even the Rockies with Coors Field could make some sense to try and get a bit more pop out of him. But I do agree, I think it's going to be interesting to see where Arraez ends up. But everybody, those are my thoughts on Jeff Passan's latest article, his preview or his way too early preview for the upcoming offseason. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think of what Passan had to say in that article? What do you think about my thoughts about the article? Let me know down below in the comments. But everybody, that's all I got for right now. If you can on the way out, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.